Ladies and gentlemen, do you know what is the hardest thing in the world? Introducing a man who needs no introduction. But since my dearest Padma Shri Vipin Buckshey uncle has bestowed this honor and this responsibility upon me, therefore I shall try my best. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are in the midst of a truly extraordinary individual. He is a New York Times best-selling author with 90 books to his credit and counting. He is a world-renowned teacher of meditation and meditative practices. He is a true champion and a vanguard of alternative medicine. He is also the founder of Chopra Global, a modern health company at the intersection of science and spirituality. And he is also the founder of the Chopra Foundation, and they conduct wide-scale research into human well-being. Most recently, he has developed a software using advanced artificial intelligence to treat depression, wherein more than tens of thousands of people have been positively impacted. And that is quite an achievement, sir, that we must put our hands together for that. He is a man who's always been ahead of the curve and ahead of the times. And one can go on and on about his achievements and accomplishments. But I think before I blabber on any further, it's time to hear from the man himself. So, ladies and gentlemen, please warmly welcome the man, the myth, the legend, none other than Mr. Deepak Chopra. And Bridge sir will be taking over. Please, sir.
Thank you.
Please,
Thank
please.
you. Friends, on behalf of all of you, my name is Bridge. I'll just try to be a bridge between you and Dr. Chopra. And whenever I fail, please directly link with that. Dr. Chopra, the first question which comes in everyone's mind, we have such eminent doctors here also. What is the future of well-being?
Okay, first of all, thank you, Bridge and Mr. Buckshey. Thank you.
Most welcome.
And thank you for having me here. It's a great privilege. You can all hear me, right? You can hear me in the back?
Yes.
Okay. So just a little background. I went to All India Institute of Medical Sciences and I graduated in 1969 and I left in 1970. So I've been abroad in the US for 53 years. Left when I was, I think, 23. I'm 76 now. So when I went to the United States, after my internship and residency, I was very fortunate to get a fellowship with a very prominent neuroendocrinologist. He was then the president of the Endocrine Society. He's a professor in Boston, Tufts University, but also taught at Harvard and BU. And I recently had breakfast with him. He's 97 now. And he is still an amazing neuroscientist. If he catches a snake in his garden, he will dissect the hypothalamus looking for neuropeptides. So, and he still argues with me about the hard problem of consciousness. So I was lucky. I was very lucky to have an extraordinary teacher. So in the 70s, we were looking, there was a Nobel Prize that had been awarded for a technique called radioimmunoassay. It was very new at that time. And so everybody was assaying everything. And we were looking at molecules that you are now very familiar with: serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin, opiates. And one of my colleagues one day, also a fellow with us, although she was also at Georgetown, one day she made a comment that these are the molecules of emotion. Oh. And I was totally taken by that. And I said to her, why don't you write a book about the molecules of emotion? And she said, if you'll write the introduction, I'll write the book. Wow. So she wrote the book and I wrote the introduction. She went on to become the chief of brain chemistry at the NIH. And unfortunately, she died prematurely of a heart attack for various reasons. So she's no longer with us. But these are two people who influenced me. And so in 1985, I wrote a book called creating health, the mind-body connection. And it became very popular because it was the first time we were speaking about that. And I got interested in how our consciousness influences brain activity and ultimately biological activity. And to make the long story short, I got very interested in what we were then calling mind and body medicine. In 1985, I also met at a conference Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and he became my guru, and he asked me, "What do you do?" I said, I'm an endocrinologist. He said, "What is that?" So I explained to him. He says, "What do you study?" I said, "Molecules of emotion." And in Hindi, he said, "Wo sab bakwas." Okay, those are not real. You come with me and I'll teach you Vedanta. So I said, "Maharishi, how am I going to make a living?" Because, I was teaching at Harvard, I was teaching at BU, I was teaching at Tufts. I said, "Where's the money going to come from?" And he looked, for a moment he paused, and he said, "Money will come from wherever it is at the moment." Wow. Okay, so I took a risk. I left what I was doing, and I started, he introduced me to a few very profound thinkers in India. One in particular, Triguna, who is no longer with us, and then other scholars, Vedantic scholars. So I started to write about that, and I did realize that, there was some truth to what he was saying, that what we call molecules are human constructs for modes of experience. It took me a long time to get there, but in the meanwhile, beyond mind-body medicine, I got interested in what we now call, somebody used the word alternative medicine. People these days use other words, integrative medicine or holistic medicine. I don't use those words. I think anything that works is good medicine, period. Absolutely. If you have evidence, it works, it's medicine. We don't need to call it allopathic or this or that. To make a long story short, 2000, when the genome was discovered, I was very involved peripherally with the conversation about the human genome. So that's only 22 years ago. Okay. And President Clinton, who was the president at that time, he made the announcement, "We've deciphered the alphabet of life, the human genome. And so now we'll have a cure for every disease, this, that, the other. Also, cancer will be cured, and heart disease will be cured, etc." So I happened to be in Milan that day the announcement came, and I got a call from CNN that President Clinton has now made this announcement, and there's a panel with the NIH and some very prominent scientists about this amazing discovery. We know the 3 billion base pairs that create the human genome, so we know the alphabet of life, and we'll be able to cure everything. Well, 22 years have gone by, and nothing has been added other than we can now genetically test everyone. Sure. So what happened in the meanwhile was, in the last few years, what has been becoming very clear is that less than 5% of disease-related mutations are fully penetrant. Less than 5% of any disease, not just, think of any disease, diabetes, metabolic syndrome, cancer, heart disease, autoimmune illness. Less than 5% of genetic mutations are fully penetrant. I need to explain what that means. Less than 5% guarantee the disease. Only less than 5%. So where's the remaining 95%? Now, those less than 5% are significant because if somebody has a BRCA gene, for example, for cancer, breast cancer, they're going to get the disease. And as you know, the poster child for that is Angelina Jolie, who had the BRCA gene and she had a preventive mastectomy, which was the right thing to do. Now, I'm sure those of you who are in the medical field also know that there is now CRISPR on the horizon, which is now approved for sickle cell anemia, but it'll soon be approved for cancer, others. But even beyond CRISPR, gene editing is going beyond CRISPR. CRISPR is molecular scissors. You cut the defective gene. But gene editing is literally the next frontier where you'll be able to read the barcode of a gene the same way you read the barcode of a soap, and you'll be able to cut and paste genes the same way you cut and paste your email. So you'll be able to say, oh, this gene is causing this cancer or this disease. Cut, paste.
Wow.
It seems like a miracle, right? But it doesn't affect more than 5%. So what about the remaining 95%? The remaining 95% are what are called epigenetic. So for those of you who are not familiar with the word, epi means above, and epigenetic means above the gene. Above the genes are a sheath of proteins called histones, and DNA is wrapped around these genes.
Wow.
And these genes get activated and deactivated every moment depending on what experience you're having. So right now, as I'm speaking to you, genes in your frontal cortex are being activated, and because I'm speaking to you, and if you're communicating with me or understanding what I'm saying, then our brains are communicating, and for our brains to communicate, certain genes have to be activated. That's an epigenetic phenomenon. Every experience, eating, breathing, digestion, metabolism, sensory experience, thinking, feeling, emotions, imagination, personal relationships, social interactions, food, name any experience, seeing a movie, listening to a song, reading poetry, activates your genes.
Wow.
So that led to an amazing kind of insight that 95% or more of disease can now be studied with precision. There's no experience that is not measurable in the brain or the body. Whatever happens in the brain happens in the body also. So there's a biological correlate to every experience. Doesn't matter what the experience. Intellectual, emotional, physical, watching a movie, listening to a song, listening to a fire alarm or panic situation. The genes are going on and off at the speed of light. And so this is epigenetic. No one doubts this. And 95% of sleep depends on 7 factors. One is sleep. So sleep is self-repair, self-regulation, both deep sleep and dreams, and it can be monitored. Now we have all these things, devices to monitor sleep and every phase of sleep. The second is stress management and meditation, which we just published a study, actually not just published, we published it 2012, 10 years ago, in Nature, which is a very prestigious British journal. And we had a Nobel laureate with us as part of the study, Elizabeth Blackburn, who discovered the enzyme telomerase, which regulates our genetic clock. And we had other investigators, from Harvard, UCLA, UCSF, Mount Sinai, many institutions, do a multi-center study. 1 week of meditation experience at a retreat at our center, the level of the enzyme telomerase, which controls our genetic clock, went up by 40%. Even the person who collaborated with us, Elizabeth Blackburn, who had won the Nobel Prize, the only reason she was in the study was prestige. She had nothing, she knew nothing about meditation. But she was shocked. 40% increase, there's no drug that does it. And she wrote a book after that, The Telomere Effect. And then what we also found in the same study, published in Nature, all the genes that are responsible for self-regulation, homeostasis, self-repair, healing, they went up some 17-fold over baseline. All the genes that were responsible for or implicated in Alzheimer's disease, cancer, autoimmune disease, they went down significantly. Inflammatory markers went down, and the study created a lot of news. So now other people have replicated the study with almost similar results.
I have a curiosity here, maybe some of you, he's given a 360-degree view on the future of well-being. When you use the word meditation, in today's world, there are so many commercial and spiritual gurus also. They are giving different structured meditations.
We stick with classics, not these brand names.
Okay.
So classic means yama, niyama, pranayam, yogasana, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. Period. We don't go through gimmicks.
So where do you advise one to start the basics of meditation?
You can go on my YouTube channel.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, simple. And it's free.
Great. One small question here. Most of the people who went into spirituality, they institutionalized it. They created an institution, they created a cult. You have never institutionalized your way of spirituality.
That was never the ambition. The ambition was give scientific validation to what works. That's it.
You spent a lot of time with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi ji, even in his last days in England, if I correctly remember. Anything you'd like to share about him?
He was an extraordinary intellectual. But I think in India, gurus have a commercial aspect to them too. So there was that aspect too. And I finally actually left for that reason. Okay. So, with good feelings. He was disappointed that I left, but he wanted me to participate in the whole guru scene. And
I believe at some stage, somewhere I read in your book that he was to be given some blood and he was not keen on that. Is it something, and then you convinced him? Is it something like this happened at some stage?
Maharishi ji had somebody poisoned him, okay? And I believe it was the CIA, because they were threatened by so-called Hinduism taking over America. And as a result, he had kidney failure, he had pancreatitis, and he had congestive heart failure too. So we had brought him to a hospital in London, and he was resuscitated. This is not public news, although probably everything is public these days. No. And he was resuscitated, and he was on a pacemaker, but he recovered. But because of his kidney failure, he had severe anemia. Okay. And when they did the type and cross match, the only blood that kind of matched was mine. And he refused to take it. So I wondered what the reason was. So then I figured it out. I said, Maharishi, you don't want my blood because you don't want my karma. He said, that's right. So I said, I have news for you. Red blood cells don't have a nucleus, and therefore there's no DNA, and you can't get my karma. He said, "Ye theek baat hai." I said, "Yes." So I told the hematologist, "Please tell him that, genetic information, karma, so-called, is in the nucleus. And since red blood cells don't have nucleus, he can get my blood." So he got it. And that helped save his life.
This is interesting. Thank you for sharing this. Probably most of us were not aware. Am I right? You mentioned the word karma, and in one of your books, if you haven't read, I'll strongly recommend. I shouldn't be sound like I am.
No, this is good. I was going to talk pure science.
He's written a book called The Future of God. What is the future of God, the way things are around, commercially been sold today? And what is your interpretation of God and karma?
See, the word God is very, very, it incites a lot of controversy and a lot of conflict all over the world. People fight about God, right?
Exactly.
Christians, Protestants, Catholics, Jews, Palestinians, Hindus, Muslims, on and on, because everybody has a concept of God. So as long as you have a concept of God, it's not God, because concept is limiting, right? The infinite cannot be conceptualized. So right there, we have a problem. I wrote The Future of God for the simple reason that if you now go and Google the following question, this is an important question. Actually, this is the most important question. If you Google or go on the internet and ask yourself, what are the 125 open questions in science? You can do that anytime, okay? So the first time this was addressed was in 2008. There was a publication, Science magazine. They listed 125 open questions in science, which means we don't have the answers. And there are some very interesting questions, why what is at the core of the planet, in the center of the planet, etc., etc. What caused the Big Bang, cosmic inflation. But the number one open question in science today is, what is the universe made of? Okay? Now, you would say we know what the universe is made of. Force fields, atoms, molecules, gravity, particles. Well, here's the problem. 70% of the universe is a mysterious energy, which is called dark energy, and we don't know what it is. It is expanding the universe faster than the speed of light. And what is expanding is the space between galaxies. This is not the usual kind of energy that Einstein spoke about, which was E is equal to mc squares. This is called the cosmological constant. It's the opposite of gravity, but we don't know what it is. So 70, and it's not atomic. Now, if something is not atomic, then we can't interact with it because we are made of atoms. Okay, so not only is it unknown, it is unknowable. That leaves 30% of the universe remaining, of which 27% is another mysterious entity called dark matter. Dark matter is also not atomic, and so we can't interact with it. That leaves 3% of the universe, which is atomic. Of that, 99.999% is invisible interstellar dust. So we don't know what that is also. Some people think it's hydrogen and helium. So the visible universe, which is 2 trillion galaxies, 700 sextillion stars, uncountable trillions of planets. Some now, according to the current science, there are 60 billion habitable planets in just the Milky Way galaxy, based on something called the Goldilocks zone. So what these telescopes look for is an atmosphere similar to Earth.
What's Goldilocks?
Goldilocks zone. If the planet is too close to its sun, it's too hot, no life, as we know it. If the planet is too far away from its sun, too cold, no life. But if it's within a certain range, then life is not only probable, it's almost certain. Okay, so according to this mathematical calculation, there are 60 billion habitable planets in the Milky Way galaxy. And if you multiply by that by 2 trillion galaxies, then the number is so astronomical you can't even imagine it. Our planet is not even one speck of dust in all the beaches of our planet. So you look at all the beaches, pick up one grain, that's planet Earth. Not even that.
Wow.
And
So we have an eminent mathematician sitting next to
lovely to
Dr.
meet you,
now.
sir.
I think not even they can calculate that the deep design of the nature. I know we are short on time.
So let's finish this question on God.
Yes.
So
I'm coming back to, I was coming to what's the future.
0.01% is the visible universe.
Ooh.
But 0.01%, those particles, if you're not observing them, they disappear. And they disappear into what are called waves of probability in mathematical space, Hilbert space. So you ask people, where is this space? It's mathematical. If you ask them, but where is it? It's just a human construct. Bottom line, the universe is made of nothing. So then why does it look like this? And that's called the hard problem of consciousness. Oh. So until recently, people think that consciousness is a product of the brain. Because if you knock somebody out, they lose consciousness. If they die, presumably there's no consciousness. Under anesthesia, there's no consciousness. So it's reasonable to think that consciousness is in the brain. But actually, there's no experience in the brain. Right now, you're hearing me. There's no sound in the brain. All there's electrochemistry. How do you hear sound? Where is the sound? It's not here because this is just vibration of atmosphere. You're looking at me. What's going to your brain is electricity, action potential. What's going to your eyes is photons. Where is this appearing? No one knows. So these two questions, what is the universe made of and what is the biological basis of consciousness, are unanswerable because they're the wrong questions. The universe is made of nothing and consciousness is not in the brain. It only has biological correlates in the brain. So this leads us to a very interesting conclusion. The universe is consciousness. Brahman and Brahmand. That's it.
Wow.
That's it.
Wow, brilliant.
So once you get that, you can answer the question, future of God. Future of God is the evolution of consciousness.
You know, why I asked the question, the future of God, I strongly recommend all of you. If you don't, I have plenty of copies with me. Just give me a call, I'll send you one. Do read that book, because our interpretation of God is so confined to our religious background or our upbringing. You use the word consciousness, and one of your friend from Laul Spiti today in Ladakh used for him collective consciousness. May I request a little bit on what is collective consciousness?
Collective consciousness has many levels. So one level is the hypnosis of social conditioning. So we are all influenced by news media, by movies, by technology. That's a level of collective consciousness. There's a level of collective consciousness which is archetypal, which means it goes to the highest level that symbolically represents the infinite. So that's what he was talking about, symbolically. So, you know, in India, when we say Mahalakshmi or whatever, you know, Saraswati and all these gods and goddesses, these are symbolic representations of the infinite, which cannot be conceptualized. Okay, so the infinite cannot be conceptualized. So we conceptualize it in these gods and goddesses that symbolically represent them, and it is the matrix of all, what you may say, cultural spirituality. But beyond that is the infinite, which is incomprehensible. Great. That's why the yamas and niyamas, and actually, you know, there are 3 schools of thought right now. One is matter only. There's only matter, and mind is a byproduct. Well, that's gone because you can't prove how electrochemistry can create mind. That's finished. The other is dualism, which is René Descartes. Mind and matter are 2 different things. But then if they're 2 different, how do you lift your arm? It starts with the mind, and this is a biological thing. What's the agency? What's the what's the energy that does it. So that's out. And there's only one thing left, consciousness only, which is Vedanta, Kashmir Shaivism, and some aspects of Buddhism. Those have the clue.
Thank you.
Not religion, which is ideology, but
Yes.
religious experience,
Yes.
which is totally different.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You mentioned in one of your articles, human aging is fluid and changeable. It can stop, it can accelerate, it can reverse also. So it is on what base actually?
So, yeah, let's let me meet you, sir. So the question is again, please repeat it so everyone can hear.
Human aging is fluid and changeable, as you mentioned in one of your articles. It can stop, it can accelerate, it can reverse also.
Okay, first I would again remind you what I just, telomerase went up by 40% in 1 week of meditation. So the way aging is being looked at by scientists today is there are various ways to describe aging. So one is biological age. Biological age is measured traditionally by blood pressure, cholesterol levels, HDL, LDL ratio, skin thickness, immune function, endocrine function. So that's biological age. But now we have more sensitive markers, telomerase, length of telomeres, inflammatory markers, epigenetic activity. So that's biological age. Chronological age, me, 76 years old. Psychological age, how old do you feel? And then spiritual age, timeless. These are the different ways. But here's what the data is showing. Data is showing that you can be biologically much younger than your chronological age or much older. If you smoke cigarettes, if you are stressed, if you have drug addiction, your biological age could be 20, 30 years more than your chronological age. On the other hand, if you have certain spiritual and other practices, your biological age can be 20, 30 years younger than your chronological age. Now, how far you can extend it, I don't know. Current extension seems to be 120, but that may be not quite accurate. The research on biological age in the US is right now mostly on signal molecules. So signal molecules are things called, they have been described recently, quercetin, fisetin, nicotinamide, nucleotide, metformin, which is used for diabetes, and now something called rapamycin. Maybe you're familiar with it. Yeah. So that's the only thing that the West is talking about. When we talk about aging, we use all of that because these signal molecules, they're responsible for DNA repair, also for self-regulation of homeostasis. But then we use Vedanta. How do you metabolize time? Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. And there is the key, and also vagal stimulation. So, you know, in the West, autonomic nervous system, we only think of sympathetic nervous system. Until recently, no interest in parasympathetic nervous system. But what they call the vagus nerve in English, which is actually the Latin word is vagus, English word is vagabond, because it goes everywhere. It seems the vagus is the correlate of what the yogis call Brahmanadi. And through pranayam, through yogasana, through dharana, dhyan, samadhi, through chanting, through mantra, you can stimulate the vagus nerve. We have actually created a device now, which is an ear pod, and it stimulates the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. You could be in a conference doing everything, and your inflammation is going down, your inflammatory markers are going down, epigenetic activity is going up. And in Ayurveda, there's a massage you do. There's a ridge at the back of your eardrum. If you massage that, you can see vagal stimulation. So I did actually an experiment with Fitbit. It's one of these devices where we were doing vagal massage and little breathing, and you could watch your heart rate variability in real time changing. It's
I think
parasympathetic.
you're talking about the Jacobson's nerve, right?
Say
It's a Jacobson's nerve, right?
that Jacobson's.
Jacobson's nerve.
Yeah, correct. So there's all this very interesting.
Mechanical quantum body also you mentioned about.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that term, mechanical quantum body?
Quantum mechanical bodies means your metabolism is regulated by experience, moment by moment, at a very fundamental level of energy and information. Now, when I wrote quantum mechanical thing 1988, it was crucified by the academics. But then 30 years later, with all this epigenetics, now people are accepting it. I'm writing a new book now with a Nobel laureate quantum physicist on quantum biology. So that's coming out in coming year.
Sir, I'd like to ask a question. Is your meditation center also experiencing theta meditation, theta waves, or sounds that are heard in the theta state?
Theta is the dream state, so meditation takes you through that state, yes. So actually, there are certain pranayams where you can decrease your breathing rate to about 2 per minute. So normal breathing rate is 14. If you inhale to the count of, say, 12, exhale to the count of 24, hold 24, or even less, you'll decrease your breathing to about 2 per minute. Takes a little practice, and your brain waves show not only theta, they go to delta all the way, which is deep sleep, but you're fully awake. The yogis know all this, by the way. The traditional yogis know everything. We just don't pay attention to these teachings are there in Yoga Sutras of Patanjali.
Will not keep you away from food for stomach. The last for food for thought, from you. You talked 360 degree about the physical health. One of your concern is the mental health, which is more today causing worry than the physical health. And I believe in UAE you're doing some great work. If you could explain what's going on.
So the work was done in the US actually. We created an AI, emotional AI. And her name is PV, named after a recording artist who had died from suicide. And PV also stands for personalized interaction with intention. And so this AI, you can check it out actually if you go to neveralone.love, www. Teenagers are more comfortable talking to a machine than to a human being because they don't feel judged. Okay, and so the AI has now saved 6,000 suicide attempts, 20 million conversations. So I went to UAE, I said, can we do it in Arabic and also for Pakistan in Urdu, but can we do it in Hindi also? And so we should, because, we can do it, it's simple, and, and then what happened is some people will still need counseling and some people can't afford it. So we created, crypto is a bad word right now, but it'll resurrect. We have a cryptocurrency to pay for those who can't afford it.
Okay, great.
So it becomes free for all.
I'd like you to come and have the last question from you and Professor Dinesh Singh, please.
No, it's we're all very fortunate to listen to such a learned person. So we are doing the G20 right now.
Correct.
India is going to be hosting it through the year. The world is passing through several crises, from slowdown of economy to the war. What is the message India should send out to the vast number of people who will be coming in terms of spiritual invigoration, mental rejuvenation? I am the G20 Sherpa for India.
Oh, really?
So what is the one central message that the country should send out to the world at this moment?
Can I have your email?
Yeah, sure.
Please, because we were looking for the G20 Sherpa. Here's the message, I think, to the world. India has never colonized any country through military might. But India is colonizing the world with its culture. And that is not only spirituality, meditation, yoga, but also technology. India is, look at Silicon Valley, it's all from India. Everybody is from IIT and Indian institutions. India is now colonizing the world with culture, with spirituality, with food, with fashion, with entertainment. And so I think if we do things correctly, India will be the next superpower, as long as we also address our poverty. That's the only thing that is missing. But otherwise, India should be the major influencer in the world, number one. The reason I'm very interested in what G20 is doing is I belong to the Society of Brain Mapping, which is an international society. And we are creating a brain technology park in Los Angeles. And we were hoping at some point that we could have a brain technology park in India, because it's easier to do things here. There are many smart people. People are very well versed in technology. They also have a cultural understanding of consciousness. So I wanted to introduce the possibility of a brain technology park, literally a park where people go, they can see how the brain functions, they can understand neuroplasticity, they can understand epigenetics. All of that would be a great boon to the world, because India is already leading in technology, if not from here, from Silicon Valley.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sorry, first of all, that I missed a significant part of your
No,
discourse. But if I remember from the last and only time I had met you, which was several years ago,
Yeah, I remember.
you had mentioned at that time that you had conducted some experiments at Harvard where you could show through deep meditation that DNA repairs itself.
Yes, and that now is actually accepted science.
I know.
Yeah.
My question is, when is it going to enter into our regular streams of study in institutions of learning?
Yeah, see, the academics are so kind of confined to their own conversation that the word never gets out. They only talk amongst themselves. So, I took upon myself the responsibility of educating the public about what the scientists are doing. And I think what needs to be done is, in every academic institution, you need somebody, at least one faculty member, who's in charge of the public education of scientific advances. Oxford has that, Cambridge has that, Harvard has that. But it's very important, otherwise the public is never aware of all these. And these guys just sit amongst themselves and they think that's enough. And it takes 10 years, 15, 20 years for the public to even become aware, and then for policies to change.
So I am going to make a push for that. Amitabh is here. Hopefully, he will sort of give me the right. He's a friend, philosopher, and guide for me, and hopefully, he will give me the right impetus. But I think the national education policy has just been announced in this country. We need to bring in things that will give us an edge over other countries, and given our heritage of the past, India could build on that and sort of leapfrog and do things in the future.
I think so. If there is something called the public awareness of scientific knowledge and advances, and how it correlates with some of the cultural insights that India has had for millennia, which have been honestly diluted, in my opinion, with all this guru stuff. But that's what it is.
My last observation, Dr. Chopra, when you were talking about where God would be in terms of whatever you just mentioned, in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says very categorically, "Na main satya hu, na asatya hu." I'm beyond both. So there's this business of 0-1 formulation. Mathematically, mathematicians, as I'm sure you're aware, have shown that no matter what system you construct of logic, howsoever logical, howsoever precise, eventually you will end up in a situation where you cannot prove the consistency of that system. It is impossible, and there will be statements in the system which will be neither true nor false because they are beyond the system. They transcend it. And so, this supreme consciousness that we talk about, I see this everywhere. Tulsidas in the Ramcharitmanas does not call Ram Vishnu. Eventually, he says, "Ye Par Brahma hai, Sakshat, supreme consciousness." Consistently, even Gandhi says, the absolute truth is not what we see in our regular terms of Vishnu, Mahesh, or so and so. He says it transcends that. In a way, I presume that what Sri Krishna said, I mean, it is full of meaning and richness. Na satya hu, na asatya hu. Mathematically, now we can show this, that you cannot. There will be a statement that will be that sort of be axiomatically defining your system, but that itself will be outside your system. A little bit like Euclid's fifth postulate, something like that.
So, you're obviously much more knowledgeable about Bhagavad Gita, but there are three things that.
And about mathematics.
And about mathematics. And about mathematics. But there are three things that Bhagwan Krishna says that resonate very closely to me. One is when he says, I am the field and I'm the knower of the field. मैं क्षेत्र हूँ और क्षेत्रज्ञ हूँ. So that is the field of consciousness, okay? That's the field, which is the ultimate, formless, infinite, irreducible, fundamental field. The second thing he says to Arjun is, go beyond the three gunas. Satya, sattva, rajas, tamas. Now that's very interesting, by the way, because I just did an interview with a Nobel laureate, Wilczek, in physics. He's from MIT. He's written a book called Fundamentals of Science. And in the book, he has three other fundamentals. He's got a chapter called Fundamentals of Fundamentals.
Oh.
Okay. And he says that the basic units of creation are spin, charge, and mass. Then he goes on to say these are not physical entities. Neither spin, nor charge, nor mass are physical. They are dimensionless entities, but they govern the universe. It immediately occurred to me, spin, charge, and mass is the three gunas. Okay? The activity starts with spin. Charge is rajas, and tamas is inertia or mass. Then I started talking to other physicists who have some inkling of Vedanta. They say, yeah, these are the three gunas, spin, charge, and mass. So that's the second insight that Lord Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita. The third, when he says, Prakritim swamvashtbhai vishrachami puna puna, curving back within myself, I create again and again. So what is creating is that kshetragya and kshetra, right? And therefore the universe is not out there, it's in me. The body is in me, the mind is in me. And then coming to your thing about axioms, classic Gödel's theorem, Ramanujan, right? Ramanujan, when they asked him, where do you get your math from? He says, the goddess gives them to me. It drives them insane. It totally drives them insane because there are, as you said, theorems that are true but can't be proved. So, yeah, absolutely. I think Gödel's theorem, to me, is indicative of creativity in the universe, because Gödel's theorem is a total disruption in algorithmic logic, right? You have algorithm, and now you have a total disruption. वो कहाँ से आया? Okay, it has to be a creative process, right?
I think we are being sort of.
Please.
Yeah, I think that's it. Hanji, boliye.
No, I think, when we were talking about God, I think to feel in all practicality, God is a comfort level to human beings.
Yeah.
And it plays a very important role. It doesn't matter religion, as you said, every religion. But God is one word which provides comfort.
Correct.
To an average, normal, living human.
Correct. 100%. In the end, by the way, I mean, coming back to what you said and what you said, the last niyama, Ishwar Pranidhana, it's the only thing left. It's you have to surrender to mystery. You cannot answer the question, why is there existence? You cannot answer, even if you go with all the theories like Big Bang and all, you ask the theorists, the best theorists, why did it occur 13.8 billion years ago? Why not 15 billion years ago? Or why not 20 billion years ago? From whose point of view? What caused the Big Bang? What happened during cosmic inflation? Why are the mathematical laws so precise for mind? You know, actually, I wrote to Freeman Dyson recently before he died, because, you know, I was having an argument and a debate, which I don't do anymore, with Richard Dawkins. You know, he's the Oxford guy, very impressive because he has a British accent. That's his only claim to fame as far as I'm concerned. So, you know, I had a debate with him and he said, I quoted Freeman Dyson, and he said, oh, Freeman Dyson couldn't have said that, and he should sue you, and this and that. Public, this is on the internet. So, you know, I listened to him, and then I wrote to Freeman Dyson, who was still alive. He just passed away at the age of 96 or something. The only living mathematician scientist from Einstein's days. So I said, you know, Dr. Dawkins says that I misquoted you. Can you please clarify? And he was very nice to send me an email. He said, 3 riddles have confused me all my life. One is a universe fine-tuned mathematically for mind and consciousness. Number 1. Number 2, the unpredictable movement of atoms and particles. And number 3, our own consciousness. I do not know the answers to these riddles, but I think they're connected. And I've preserved that email for my children because it comes from a legend, you know, real legend in mathematics.
I did want to ask you, you talked about your study published in Nature, epigenetics, and you know the impact of meditative processes on health and self-rejuvenation. But we want, and I also really like to question about, you know, what India has to showcase. So the rest of the world has moved far ahead on also understanding the nature of learning, mind-brain learning, you know, and we want to transform the world. So more than the health, it's also the mind. So would there not be need for a parallel study looking at meta processes, reflective processes, active learning, and then how it impacts culture, understanding of humanity? Because what's health good for? If, you know, we don't have an ecosystem where we can be a community and where we can all thrive.
The education system.
That's where India has a lot to give.
Yeah, it does.
We have fallen behind.
We have.
Because, you know, as an education researcher, I've seen 30 years back, we can see how students solve problems.
Yes.
And what part of the brain gets activated. But on cognitive sciences, we are far behind, though we are talking of AI. You know, so we need to connect the dots.
We are behind, but also.
That's where I feel your brain technology park
has
to have a
we would love to do brain technology park in India. Yeah.
That has to be pragmatic.
Yeah.
It has to link up with our lives,
Yeah.
lives of the young.
Correct.
I don't know if I made my point.
You did make your point, but you know, education is in.
We'll understand it better.
Education right now is information overload, and I don't need that. I can Google anything I want. There's no education about the self, period. Not, you know, it's no education about your body, no education about your mind, no education about your brain, no education about consciousness. So the whole education system worldwide is screwed up.
So mental well-being
Absolutely.
is more important than the health rejuvenation.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do we bring that up? And so probably the ancient Indians had it right.
They had it right.
I will say probably, but
Not probably.
We can't.
But see, the ancient Indians also, we have a romantic notion.
Replicate the system, we will conjecture.
The ancient Indians we tend to romanticize, but we should just talk about the few luminaries of the Upanishads. They are the gems of more
Do you
of
plan
civilization.
study of that kind?
We are
Since
we
you're
are
on
doing.
the AI,
Yeah, we are. We are
path
doing.
to the stress.
Yeah, we are doing that right now. That's why AI actually helps, because deep learning systems, you can look at, make everything very precise, make everything very predictable, make everything measurable, and make everything replicable, but also personalized, because two people given the same interventions will have completely different outcomes. You can have one patient seeing a doctor, same diagnosis, same disease, same treatment, they have completely different outcomes. Of course, statistically, there's a bell-shaped curve for everything, but when one looks at the anomalies, that's where the gold is, because if there's even one person that's exceptional, there's a mechanism. And if you're a scientist, then you want to know the mechanism, right? Yes, very important. This is India's gift to the world.
One last thing, the takeaway for today's evening. So
Takeaways: Indian culture needs to be given scientific validity, and it is getting that. And therefore, I think the combination of Indian spirituality, which is the understanding of consciousness. I mean, people define spirituality in different ways. I think there's only one way to define it, which is self-awareness. I'm not talking about self-mind awareness. I'm talking about self-awareness, Atma, Darshan, ultimately. That combined with scientific validation is the key to every problem in the world.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Chopra. It's truly been an honor and a privilege to hear you at such close quarters. I think we can all agree, we're truly enriched by your discourse. And thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Now, Mrs. Sangeeta Buckshey has arranged some sumptuous food and beverage, and
Yes.
I urge all of you to savor some of it and make the night merry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Doctor. Thank you so much.